Squad live on Sunday. We're going to talk about some paranormal Reddit posts that we found that seemed very interesting. I'm Rachel.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Jen, and we'd love to get your perspective and some feedback on what you think about the Reddit post. And, you know, we want this experience to be interactive with everybody. So, yeah, please join in with us.
Okay, we scoured the Reddit paranormal and high strangeness and found a topic that we can actually relate to.
All of us.
Personally, outside of our paranormal fieldwork.
For sure.
I want to talk about, and I know a lot of other people can also relate to. So let's get into it.
Let's go.
If anybody else can relate to what we're talking about, drop a ghost emoji in the comments. The Reddit post, I'll read it, says, "Hi guys, first time poster here. We recently just bought a house. We moved in exactly 1 week ago. We've had no strange incidents at all. Tonight, my almost 3-year-old said, 'There's a ghost trying to get you, Mom, in our new favorite house.' He said this completely out of the blue. Today, he has also started calling this our favorite house. Then, putting my 5-year-old to bed, she said that last night, as she was coming to our room, she usually ends up in our bed, sometimes in the middle of the night, that she saw someone in our house that, like, totally disappeared. She's never said anything like that before. So my question is, what should I do? Would it be beneficial to sage the place? Help."
That one definitely gave me goosebumps when we first read that one. That one was creepy.
Me too.
Absolutely. So do we want to get right into answering the question? What should she do? Should she consider saging the house?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Nicole?
I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's definitely not going to hurt anything, but I definitely feel like, especially being in a new home, especially if they've never experienced anything like this before, I definitely think it's a good idea to sage the house.
I 100% agree. And on top of that, the fact, to elaborate a little bit more on what you just said, to me, the fact that they have never experienced anything like this before with either of their children, and that the 3-year-old is making a comment that seems very kind of obscure for a 3-year-old to make, the way that it was worded, that like wants to get you, Mom, that almost seems a little bit threatening. But there hasn't been enough interaction to know if there is any malicious intention or if it's maybe just the misinterpretation of a 3-year-old.
Exactly.
Your thoughts, Rachel?
I agree also, but I do know that saging can be the wrong thing to do.
That is true.
Especially if you are not doing it with the proper intentions and experience to know what you're doing, especially when you have kids in the house, like a 3 and a 5-year-old. That's touchy to light a bundle of sage in your house, and not if you're not experienced or you're not sure what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely agree with you.
So although it would appear that possibly seeking out some type of assistance and pursuing the sage route may be a very good option for this family, I do 100% agree that for their own safety, it's not an undertaking that they should do on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless she actually knows what she's doing with
Correct.
the sage.
Correct. But
it almost makes me kind of wonder maybe that she doesn't know what she's doing if they've never experienced anything like this before, And if she is reaching out and asking for help because this is all new to her, then that kind of steers me in that direction that maybe she doesn't know. But I mean, a lot of people know, they kind of use that as, a lot of people kind of know knowledgeable as far as like, oh, if something's happening, I should sage the house. A lot of people kind of take that and they know kind of the principle in that aspect. But like you said, if they've never actually done it or have any knowledge on that, they don't really know what that entails. That doesn't mean like, oh, hey, anyone can just grab a, thing of sage and just start saging and it's going to, really work.
Not after the fact.
Right.
You would have staged it before you moved in. If you
Of
knew
course.
what you're doing. But there's been instances we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there's instances where we've saged and it can make things intensify in the
Yes.
home.
Yeah, because that all goes back to it's early on in this new location with just 2 experiences so
They're
far.
only a week in to living in the
Correct,
house.
correct.
In their
They
new
don't-
favorite house.
Yeah.
They have not. They've not learned the intentions of the spirit that they're
Yes.
interacting with.
Yes.
It could be a spirit that is just very much in love with the home that was their family home for many, many years and is just struggling with having new people on the location.
Yeah.
And so it could be nothing more than
Mhm.
they need to figure out a way to coexist together
Yep.
peacefully.
Yeah.
Or it could be something, or it could be something else. But until they have more experiences at this point, or they let those experiences happen, they're not going to be able to figure that out.
As mothers, though,
Exactly.
it's only going to take one time for my baby to tell me,
Yeah.
that there's a problem,
Uh-huh.
and I'm going to address it.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the same for all of us.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. So she's got to figure out right now if her 5-year-old seeing a spirit disappear or a person disappear, if she considers that threatening behavior, or if her daughter is just open to the paranormal.
Right. But doesn't it say something about like it's trying to get you, mommy?
That's
Yes.
that's the part that doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
is that
part.
the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old?
3-year-old. The 3-year-old says specifically, there's a ghost trying to get you, Mom, in our new favorite house.
And it seemed like, too, the way where it was placed in that statement, that was actually the first encounter or the first thing that was said that was off, which that kind of troubles me a little bit.
So again, the reporter of this is a 3-year-old. And so
Yeah.
there's not enough information.
This light is blinding me.
Sorry.
It's not
It is definitely hard when that's who your source is, but at the same time, like Rachel said, when it comes to, obviously we have kids, so sometimes the kids know more than they think they know. When it comes to saying stuff like that, sometimes that might not seem like anything to them, but it means more to someone that is more knowledgeable on it or that has more, thoughts, So that might just seem like innocent to them, but it's really something more.
And it could be nothing. It could be
It absolutely could be.
owner who is very, tied and connected.
Mhm.
And that'll be another Reddit topic that we might be discussing.
Correct.
Is
It will be.
where spirits are attached
Mm-hmm.
to things and property.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one thing that I do think is very clear from this thread is that this spirit I do not believe is a spirit that they have brought with them.
That
I do 100% totally believe
this is something
that this
new.
spirit is something that they have encountered in their move to this location.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree with that.
I would say if things continue and there is a fear that comes from it,
Mm-hmm.
then they need to call in help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we know that fear can be the food.
The fuel.
Yeah, it'll fuel a
Chain
haunting.
reaction.
Yeah, it can make a haunting.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and back to what you said, we're all mothers, and that's the thing. You get one shot at this. You scare my kids once, and
Yeah.
we're done being friendly.
Yeah, right. The kids get scared of things
They
they
do.
don't need to be scared
True.
of.
But I mean,
And
if it
this
becomes
is
truly
one of
threatening,
those things where
Yeah.
you're gonna kind of start off with a little bit of fear.
Of course, yeah.
I would say maybe, if she has any experience with paranormal, or if she happens to be open to it somewhat herself, it may not be a bad idea for her to try to have an interaction, herself, remove her children and have it be her.
Yeah.
That's what we would do.
Yeah, don't do anything
with your children.
With the kids
No.
present.
Never.
Correct.
Never do that.
Ever.
Like what we would do would be, hey, Rachel, Nicole, got a situation here. I need you to come and help me check it out. We need to do a little bit of investigation and see if we can make, a connection, communicate in some way, shape, or form, and try to figure out what the intention is.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that.
Of the property.
Oh, that's
find out what has happened there. Who lived there before? You may have a name that resonates that you can actually talk directly to the spirit. It could be a grandma. It could be a mom. It could be somebody who's really just trying to look out for the kids or the family.
Correct.
Or the mom.
Very true.
You have to find out if it's if it's not something that you can just remove.
Yeah. The other thing that's funny, and it seems very far-fetched, but it's not just the stuff that you see in movies. There could be a familiar or a family connection that they are completely unaware of. And it may be part of the reason why they ended up there in the first place. So, very true what Rachel's saying. There could very well be a connection there that they're not even aware of.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
From this, I do not get the feeling that at this level, this is malicious, because there's just not enough information there to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Thank you for all the shares and likes, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I think we should maybe share some of our own experiences we've had with our kids.
Yeah.
And their paranormal experiences we've dealt with.
It's a good idea.
I agree.
Do we have any, I can't see the questions. Do we have anybody that's asked anything specific that we should address?
We have, is it Luan Loud Fan 1 says hello and also says whatever spirit it is, fear will feed it.
Very true. 100%.
I mean, I would say I agree to an extent, because if it's like,
if it has malicious intentions,
we
it
have
will
a lot
feed
of
it.
family that we have in spirit, so
Yeah.
that would not apply to that situation. But there's no reason for us to be in fear unless we just didn't know who it was or why they were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and along those same lines, a child, children can be fearful of anything for any reason. They don't interpret things the same way that adults do. So a child could be it could be grandma coming and the child's just afraid because they just don't have any background on the situation.
Kids actually are pretty intelligent.
They are.
About what they are picking up
perception-wise.
Yeah.
Perception-wise.
Yeah.
But there are some entities that will be misleading, will intentionally pretend to be something that they're not also. But but a child that's fearful, this goes back to exactly what you were saying. If a child's afraid, but it is a family member that is there in love and kindness, they're not going to feed off of that negativity. If anything, they're going to try to be consoling and try to be supportive.
Yeah.
Only a malicious and hopefully only something with ill intention is going to take that negativity and build on it.
Right.
I would say if you were worried about your kids' safety, then you should call in help.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And don't do anything. Don't try to talk or communicate to the spirits with your kids there. Don't sage with your kids there.
Mm-mm.
That would be my suggestion.
Correct.
I agree.
And if you're going to do any of those things, it may not even be a bad idea to have them have a sleepover someplace for a couple days.
Yeah.
just to make sure, so you can kind of get a feel for what the house is going to feel like in the days and the hours after you do something like that.
Yeah.
If it's an option, yes.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
Do you
Okay.
ladies want to share a personal experience?
sure.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first? Who drew the short straw?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay.
Dive right in.
Just jump right in there, ladies. So, about 10 years ago, my family, I have 5 kids. My husband and I, we lived in a funeral home that's owned actually by my family. And I'm just going to say, like, it's not just about the kids. Like, my husband and I experienced things there too. But our kids were like probably about 7, 8, 13. And we lived there for about 3 years. So throughout that time, my kids all had their own rooms and they would come in and sleep on our floor because they were terrified to live there. And I didn't actually find out until we moved later, even just recently, how much my kids hated living there. They were terrified. It caused my daughter to have insomnia, my youngest daughter, because she was so scared to sleep by her, like even with us in our room on our floor, because I'm pretty sure there was like what we would call an old hag entity there. And that's just the one that I for sure know of. And we've actually done a very, very small investigation there since then.
Yeah.
And had some very weird things happen, but we never did anything like that while we lived there. But yeah, all my kids ended up telling me after we moved out and they felt safe to talk about it, that they felt like there was like evil, something evil there, that terrified them. They would sleep together all in one room if they had to, in one of their bedrooms, whichever one they felt the most comfortable in.
Yep.
And that's had like a long-term impact. I think that whatever was there has impacted my kids' like their health, their physical health, their emotional health, their mental health, and it affected mine also. And
so you see the pattern.
Yeah.
Looking back now in hindsight, you see the pattern of how negativity can break down a person.
Yes, 100%.
Or break down a family unit even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
You or me, Nicole?
I don't care. I'll go.
Okay.
So I have 3 kids. All of them throughout the years have kind of had some type of experience, said something. But my youngest, he is definitely, I don't even know what kind of wording I would put for him, but he definitely definitely makes me question sometimes on certain things. My father passed away when I was 16. Unfortunately, before I had kids or anything, so he never got a chance to meet, his grandchildren and everything like that. And my youngest is actually named after him. And ever since he was about 2 or 3, he was diagnosed with night terrors. All the doctors have said it's been, it's completely normal. Some kids have them. There's different triggers, all that can cause it. We've done a lot of research on it. We have tried all different things. Nothing seems to help. And over the years, it's progressively gotten more intensified. In the beginning, it was kind of in that, I don't know if anyone that knows what night terrors are, they're kind of similar to, I guess, what would you guys say? Like similar to like sleepwalking, but not really that physical aspect, I guess.
It's kind of like
that makes sense.
Where you're up and physically active.
Yes. Yeah. But you're not, when someone talks to you, like you're kind of like that glazed over eyes. You're in that sleep state still, but you're physically you look awake, but you're really not. And it started out kind of just that you'd kind of coerce him to bed, whatever. And throughout the time, it has been getting increasingly worse, to the point where he's actually gotten up and ran around the house, whatnot. But now it's actually gotten to the point where he actually has woken up, still sleeping, and he will sit in the bed and actually have full on conversations, changing his voice and everything like that. But which really gets me is he's actually been able to tell me things about my father that he shouldn't actually know. He's never, like I said, he was not born. He was, passed on before he was ever born or anything like that. Conversations and information that I never even shared with my son, and he is 8. But like I said, he has actually been able to tell me things, that he knows. I mean, ever since he was a baby, he was able to grab my dad's photo and be able to tell me exactly who he is. He's made little comments here and there randomly, just run in and tell me things. And like I said, stuff that he would not know. And when he's having this conversation, he changes his voice to a deeper voice, and he's not scared. I mean, he's comfortable with everything. So clearly whoever he's speaking with is not scary to him. But it definitely kind of gives me goosebumps a little bit, knowing, that he's able to tell me things about my dad that he should, really never know. But clearly, I've also been told from a lot of people that, my dad's around there and he protects his grandkids and he watches over them. And there's little things that he does that definitely reassures me that he's definitely there. And he's definitely with my kids, for sure.
So just because I remember you telling me something about this one specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've got motorcycles going by. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear him.
So didn't he tell you his old phone number?
Yes. That's what's crazy is this was back. So he's 8 and he would have been about 5. And he ran into the room. I was working in the garage, and he comes running, barreling in the door. And he asks me, Mom, what's the phone number to heaven? And I was like, I don't know, Bubba. I'm not sure. And he's like, okay, just ran away. And I was actually talking to my mom earlier that day, and I told her, and I was like, it was just really odd. And about an hour later, he comes running back in the room, and he goes, I got it. And I was like, what do you got? And he's like, I have the phone number to heaven. And I was baffled. And I was literally in shock. I didn't know what to say. And like I said, I was working. So I had a pen and paper, and he just starts spewing numbers out. And not even like he was trying to think of numbers. He was so confident in these numbers. And it was probably a sequence of 20 numbers. And I wrote them down, and he walks away. And once again, I'm talking to my mom, and I think I was talking to both of you. And I kept looking at this pad of paper with these numbers on it, and I could not, it was really getting to me. And I remember even to the point, I think one of you guys said, look it up, thinking it's like coordinates, for like a location or something, because we were like, it just wasn't setting well. We're like, what is this? And I remember it was a couple days later, and I was sitting there and I just kept looking at this number, and I'm like, there's something weird. And it dawned on me, and I looked, and there was like some numbers and then obviously numbers at the end. And I looked directly in the middle of the numbers. I just kept repeating them over and over again. And it hit me, and I literally started crying. My heart started racing. I started getting goosebumps. And then it dawned on me, and I realized that the middle grouping of the numbers it matched my dad's phone number from when he passed away. And I looked on my phone. My dad's number is still saved in my phone. Like I said, I'm 33 years old. He passed away when I was 16. I still have his number saved in my phone. It was down to the 319, everything. My son at this time was 5. He would not have known. It was like 4 numbers, my dad's full phone number, and then other numbers. And I took a screenshot of it. I remember sending a picture to you guys with the screenshot saying daddy, his phone number, and this number that my 5-year-old son literally told me was the phone number to heaven. And it was a very happy moment, but also like mind-blowing moment, because how does a 5-year-old know that? I mean,
Well, a 5-year-old knows that because they got a call from heaven.
Because
Yeah.
That's how a 5-year-old knows that.
they see, hear, experience, feel, smell, all of the senses, and then some things
Yeah.
we have no idea of.
And Miguel is sensitive.
Yeah.
He's
He is.
sensitive.
He's a sensitive boy. He definitely is. And yeah, I mean, that was a crazy experience for me. And I think it was another reassuring. Like I said, he always makes little comments to remind me that my dad is here and he's watching us and he's watching the kids and everything. But like, that was a reassurance to me that like my dad told him, like, this is how you reach me, you know, whatever, like, cause kids throw things out. And like I said, something that sounds crazy might not mean anything, but it really does. And like I said, I mean, there's no other logical reason in the world that he would come to me and ask me what the number was and come back and tell me that that was the phone number. And it happened to be my dad's cell phone number from when he passed away. And it was definitely that reassuring thing.
Well, thanks, Nicole. Now that I have to follow that story.
Sorry, we should have saved you for last. I knew that.
Sorry.
Come on, girl, you
Sorry.
Okay. Well,
You're gonna have to dig deep in your bag now.
I know. I was going to say, dig real deep.
so for those of you who are not aware, Nicole is actually my daughter. So,
And my cousin.
and
Yes.
Rachel's cousin. And so the story that she just shared is also about my grandson, which is, so it's kind of emotional right
Yeah.
now. So I'm going to try to pull it together and share a situation that happened with Nicole when she was a little girl.
Hold on, before you start. We have some things in the chat. And
Okay.
in the comments.
So we'll pause.
Sorry. Okay, so I don't know if I'm saying this right. Luan Loudfan1 said, "Why are Ouija boards not safe to use?"
Well, for one, Ouija boards open a portal, basically.
It's not that they're not safe.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not
the intention behind them and
Yeah.
how you interact with what comes through,
how you use it.
how you use it.
Yeah.
And also being knowledgeable how to properly use it.
And how
Because that's a lot of thing is a lot of people get scared or whatever and they don't close it. And that can be a very dangerous thing if you're not prepared or know what you're doing, and just by messing around and then you get scared and people just kind of throw it away like, oh, I'm done, and kind of walk away. That's never a good thing.
Right. And the one thing I will say that can be touch and go with Ouija boards is they open. It's not like you're requesting or talking to a spiritual energy that is present. You're opening a realm and allowing a portal for things to come through.
Why do you say that? Why do you think it's different than us doing any other?
I'm not saying it's different. I'm saying, but it can be, so like a seance would be similar, right? But you can call out or ask for a specific entity. But when you do certain techniques, you're opening up like basically a hole, a wormhole, or a portal, or whatever you want to call it.
That's what we're doing every time we use any kind of equipment.
Which is why,
even not using equipment, when we're trying to communicate with spirit.
Could be.
Yes and no. Yes and no. And the reason I say that is because you're kind of going at it blind when you're using the Ouija board, and you don't know what is coming through the board.
I'm saying, okay, for example, what's the difference between using the obelisk and using the Ouija board?
There's really not. I mean, it's minute differences, right? Like, in theory, when you're using maybe the obelisk, it could be that you're usually using that interacting with spirit that you think is present. And a lot of times that spirit is, maybe attached to that location, or it could be spirit that's, following along with you for protection or whatever reason. Right. But when we use it, I feel like when we're using the obelisk, we're trying to communicate with the spirit that is there, or trying to isolate a spirit, or trying to identify the spirits that are there in that location. When you open a Ouija board, which, anytime that you're communicating, something could come through. It depends on the strength of the entity that you're talking to, or the strength of the spirit that you're talking to. But with Ouija boards in particular, and I don't physically know what the difference is, but I've had a really negative experience with a Ouija board before.
But we've had things very negative and demonic sounding come through the obelisk and other devices.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. So the question would be, there's still a lot of unknowns out there with the paranormal.
Yeah,
right.
I think that we're opening up to energy that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime we're opening ourselves up to communicate.
Absolutely, we are. Absolutely,
well, yeah.
Absolutely, we are. But I just feel like the difference is, and it's a minute difference, and there's a lot of gray area, and so they do probably cross and overlap. But I feel like a lot of the time, so let's say like none of it's all or nothing. So the majority of the time, when we're using the spirit box or we're using the obelisk,
Mm-hmm.
we're, at least we think, or we're intending to speak or communicate with the spirits that are in that location. There's a small, minute chance that we're opening up a realm and pulling some or allowing something else in that we're not intending to.
I don't think it's a small chance at
Yeah,
all. I
yeah.
think that it's
But
most
with the
likely.
Ouija board,
Mm-hmm.
it's more, I think it's flipped the other side. I think the odds are weighted differently.
I think that's Hollywood. I think that is all Hollywood. Personally, my opinion.
Yeah,
is
and that's fine.
Hollywood has given it, but it's also a mass-produced object that's easily and readily available at Walmart.
Yeah.
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 Everywhere.
Well, and I don't disagree
and
with
it's been
you.
used by children and people that have no idea what they're actually doing.
Correct.
Sure.
And that's the biggest problem, and that's the point that I was going to make is that it needs to be handled not just as a toy, but it needs to be handled as there's risk involved with this.
A communication
It
device.
is a communication device, and you may be communicating or opening yourself up to communications that you really don't want to have.
Mm-hmm.
You also need to be aware of how to properly close it down
Mm-hmm.
and have control of the situation and be able to read the situation and, and kind of identify who or what you're interacting with.
Yeah.
And know when to shut it down and close that properly.
Right.
Yeah.
So that becomes the big thing about it.
So,
And-
why are Ouija boards not safe to use? Well, they technically are no different, I think, than any other piece of equipment that you could use to communicate with spirit. It's about intention and knowledge. You have to know how to open and close
Mm-hmm.
anything you're using.
Well, I will say this, and I agree with you.
Mhm.
And I think I think where we're at, kind of like different perspectives,
Yeah.
is a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
And I think that it comes down to perspective, because I've used a Ouija board before we were in a group,
Yeah.
before I had children,
Yeah.
and on 3 or 4 occasions, and bad experiences every single time I used them. I personally have never had a good experience with a Ouija board.
Right, but were you using the same techniques that we would use going into an investigation and coming out?
So to that point, I wasn't as experienced as I am now.
Yeah.
But I still was experienced. So like I grew up in a house that was very active, that had 3 different spirits. I sensed that from the time I was like 6 years old.
Yeah.
I could basically tell you gender and approximate age of those spirits and how they would be perceived as in a human form.
Right.
I don't know how I knew that at that age, but it was just as clear to me as it would be if somebody moved across the street into a house and I was, introduced to them. It was just something that I was just aware of.
Right.
And so I navigated that. And my mom and my sister were also sensitive, but they were scared
Mm-hmm.
of what they did, of what it was. And even though I was the child and I was older than my sister, but younger than my mother, of course,
Yeah.
they would like literally wake me up and ask me to make it stop or tell it to be quiet or have it leave them alone.
Right, but that wasn't due to anything that you had done with the Ouija board. That was a
That was
pre-existing
not-
condition.
Right. That was pre-existing. But my point being is that I grew up knowing how to navigate that and
Right.
how to navigate those situations. So although I didn't have the experience that I have now and the techniques that we have developed and the ways that we have formulated to try to identify unsafe situations and closed sessions, that is a lot more developed now. But
I didn't think this was
reading-
gonna go
Yeah,
like this.
yeah.
Just reading.
No, it's fine. But
I know.
reading, being able to read the intentions, you know what I mean? Being able
Yeah.
to read the intentions of and interact and know how to basically protect myself.
Right.
I mean,
You know,
I
that's
just,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I had a sense of that.
Right, but everybody doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
That's my whole point, is that you had a natural inclination to be able to interact with the supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do not.
Right.
Well, I think most people can. They just don't.
Though.
They just don't.
They don't.
You know, it's
They're not-
actually kind of funny.
But that whole thing, I
This
digressed
is
a little bit.
Our generation was very different than the generation that we are living in right now.
Correct.
Like, we were not talking about shadow work and trauma. And
No.
this was not conversations that were at the dinner table, okay?
No, people would
So
shut you
it was
down.
a very different. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny though that this topic was brought up, and just listening to both of you, right? Like with both your point of views on it. It's kind of funny because Rachel, you're not wrong as far as other equipment, right? Like what really makes it different from other equipment that we're using. But it's kind of funny that every single location that we go and investigate at, you are to sign a waiver that Ouija boards are not allowed. So realistically, why I kind of wonder that, like, why do all these locations not allow Ouija boards, but they obviously allow all the other type of, spirit boxes, obelisks, dowsing, all these other stuff that can do the exact same thing. It kind of like makes my kind of head bounce a little bit, because now I'm kind of wondering that, like, well, why actually?
Really good point.
Well, and I think that that's an excellent point, and I think that it all goes back to Rachel's point about how it has been so overused and misrepresented in movies, in Hollywood, and just in general. And I think that it has just been associated with like bad intentions and black magic and things that, the use of it is perceived as if you're using a Ouija board here, you're
Why
doing
is
something
it any
wrong.
different than, we're going to get way off topic and go way later than we need to be if we keep talking about this.
Hey, whatever.
This
This is the way it
how we
goes. Come
roll.
along for the ride.
I know, right? Because what's the difference between a Ouija board and us using a pendulum board?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I don't understand what the difference is.
That's exactly the same thing.
Why is that?
Because
any
you have
different?
yes,
It's the
no,
exact
open,
same
close,
thing.
whatever.
And
It's
Yeah,
all
you're
different.
asking questions and you're, having it guide whatever the answer is. So what makes that any different? Which is crazy.
Different than
Yep.
using dowsing rods.
And so
Yeah.
just to make a statement, just to make a clear statement on where we kind of ended that other part of the discussion about the Ouija board.
Yeah.
Why I went down that rabbit hole with
Yeah.
like my perspective
Yeah.
is because that's the difference for me,
Mhm.
is that every time I've used the Ouija board,
Yeah.
it was a bad experience. It was a negative experience. I
Well,
used
we
the other
used it-
stuff
We've used it on investigation. And
one
we didn't-
time,
And we didn't have a negative experience.
but
Not
I
from
was
the spiritual side of things.
well, I'm going to tell you right now though, I was very closed off to it. And if you remember, I didn't put my hands on
I
the
wasn't
board.
there. I was not there.
But like
Put that out there.
Yeah, and one of those other people started having bad things happen and had a shadow person at their house that they had to ask assistance. Started having bad things happen and had a shadow person at their house that they had to ask assistance to remove. After we came back from that trip.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Anywho,
I don't know that it was ever correlated directly to the Ouija board.
well, yeah, and I don't think it was actually correlated to the Ouija board that we were using at that time either. I
Nope.
think that was a pre-existing condition that
Yep.
somebody else opened up in that
Very true.
in their actual home.
Now, what I
It
say,
is true.
I'll go on record to say, I'm not afraid to use a Ouija board because I feel like we know how to protect ourselves, or at least we would be aware how to be more aware of what we're interacting with.
It.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I would be open to you. If you guys told me, hey, look what I got. We want to try this. I'd be like, okay.
I think it's intention.
It is.
I really think it's intention. I think the intention is kind of the explanation for why they're not allowed at most locations also.
It goes back to like the negativity. It's got the negative vibe. People think.
Yeah, some people use them to actually open portals and bring in dark entities into locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some people, I just think that it opens such a void that some people are just not strong enough to control what happens after that. And I think that a lot of locations are nervous about what might be let in.
Do it, Nicole.
Yeah. Don't you think that though?
Nothing.
Some places are probably just afraid of what might be let in to that location.
Yeah.
I think that might be the basis of it too.
Removed.
Or not
Removed.
let in or removed. But I
the
think
portal goes both ways.
It sure does.
So.
It sure does.
And they do not want us helping people to get out of there.
Well, no, why would you?
Thank you.
And sure. I mean, whatever. Okay. Do you have anything to add before we move on? Okay. And Luan Loud Fan 1 also said, that's really sweet that your dad's ghost is still watching you, Nicole, from heaven.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Daniel, thank you for all the gifts and
thank you.
being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, you ready to share your
I just did. I just shared.
Nice try, sister.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay, so I guess because I kind of prefaced it.
Yeah.
I gotta finish it. So Nicole was probably about 3, and the house that I was talking about previously, where I grew up, where there was a lot of activity and we had the spiritual interactions there. At that time, Nicole and I was living there with my kids, and the one bedroom upstairs in particular had a lot of activity, and that's the one room that I would say probably was the most uneasy and had probably the darkest activity, if that would make sense to say.
Like concentrated?
Yeah. And nobody ever got hurt, but the intention was very much aimed at trying to scare people. So there was a lot of that back and forth. So when we moved into that house, I was very, very aware that I did not want my children being in that.
It's a cardinal.
Oh. Hi, Grandma.
Somebody's here.
My grandma loved cardinals. I knew 100%, was very much aware that I was not making that my children's bedroom. I did not want my kids in that room, unattended. So it was my room. And, like kids do, like your story where, the kids get up and they come to your room in the middle of the night. That happened one night, and I ended up with Nicole and her brother. They were in my bed, and I got up to go downstairs and get something to drink. And, I checked on them. They were sleeping. The house had been pretty quiet as far as activity, so it wasn't really on my radar. And I was probably downstairs for 5 or 6 minutes, and I start coming back up the stairway, and all of a sudden I hear like a voice. And so I stopped and I listened, and then I hear giggling, and then I hear Nicole's voice going, yeah, okay, and then laughing. And I'm like, those two, they woke each other up. Now they're up there playing. It's 2:00 in the morning. They're supposed to be sleeping. So I go upstairs, all the way upstairs, walk into the room, expecting to be like, you guys need to go to bed. And no, what do I see when I peek my head in the door? Nicole is sitting on the edge of my bed, with her feet dangling, kicking her feet, nodding, looking at the wall where there's nobody at, that's visible anyway, going, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh, heck no. And
She still does that.
so,
Whatever.
well, just because
Whatever.
But anyway. So I run downstairs and I get a hammer and I get a screwdriver.
Oh, shit.
And it's 2:00 in the morning and I go back upstairs and I proceed to take the door off the hinges. And
She became unhinged.
I woke, literally, I woke
That's what
everybody
it
in the
happened.
house. And your dad says, what are you doing? You know, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, Nicole's talking to somebody that's not here that you can't see, but I know they're here because I know who it is. They're not locking my daughter and my son in this room like happened to my sister and I when we were kids. So the door is going in the closet, and whenever we leave, you can put it back on. And he's like, what? And then he wouldn't sleep in there.
Of course not.
So he moved into your room.
Oh my gosh. After all the things I can only imagine he had experienced at that point in his life, and he's like, yeah, I'm out too.
No, he did. Literally.
That's how you know
Literally.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly.
And then he sleep by the door.
Sounds like that wrong.
That's not surprising. That's not surprising.
I ain't sleeping on that side.
Yeah.
You gotta switch me sides.
That's my husband.
And that's why they were cousins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I guess we're the protectors.
I'd high five you, Nicole.
I'm the camera.
We got this. Oh God. Well, I don't know, guys. I think we should do this again.
Oh,
What do you
absolutely.
guys-
Daniel said, keeping me interested. Good stories and advice, ladies. Thank you.
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. Yeah, we would definitely love your guys' feedback on how you guys felt about this. We would really like to possibly make this kind of like an every other weekend type thing, different kind of topics. I mean, obviously all within the paranormal, but different type of, kind of things to go off of. We would love to know what you guys think about it.
We have a couple other ideas that we've pulled off of the paranormal Reddit threads and the high strangeness thread. And and it may not be about spirit activity every time. It might be about weird other things that people are sharing about that we think would be interesting to discuss. So
Yeah.
it could be anything. It could be
About
cryptids,
locations.
cryptids, locations,
Aliens. You never know. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I'm down.
I think so too. I had a good time.
I did too. It
I
was
did
fun.
too. I think it was a good night.
Daniel said definitely on Sunday nights, and that's what we're
Yep.
thinking as well.
Yes. We're thinking every other Sunday. So yeah, perfect. Around the same time. On the Sundays too.
Follow Spirit Squad Paranormal and keep an eye out. We'll get some stuff posted ahead of time maybe and let y'all know that we're going to be going live to have another paranormal Reddit chat and do this again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys all for who stayed, popped in and out and interacted with us, and the gifts, the shares, the likes, all of that is so much appreciated.
And thank you everybody that is watching us from Nicole's TikTok also, because we know we can't see who's watching or comments from that side over here on our side. So
I know. And I can't see who's commenting on that side. So unfortunately.
Right, it works this way so that because
Right.
Nicole's almost an hour away from us. So this works for us right now. And we love it, that we can work this out to be able to continue
Absolutely.
sharing, talking all the weird, strange things.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, much love to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank
Love
you
and
so
love.
much.
See y'all again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.